their body.
Riding through the city in my Merkaba. Time ain't linear, circular. First they wanna hate, now they replicas.
The Tesla, a young Tesla.
Smoking some strong, call it Nebula. Crossing shawty names off my hit list. The same ones say I never hit this.
All right, so I am very blessed to be joined by Sarah. What we're going to be having is a conversation. We don't have any plans for it for the moment, but just kind of going on the flow and seeing how things transmute. So Sarah has her platform, Sensual. There you go. Thank you, Sarah. And a lot of what Sarah does is she's assisting a lot of people in understanding the aspects of the feminine and the masculine from my understanding, a tantric perspective. But I guess to open up the lines of communication, I'd love for Sarah to explain a bit about herself and the platform before we dive in a bit further. Take it away.
So I don't like to say I teach Tantra or I just work with Tantra, because Tantra is so much bigger than just sexuality. And as I do believe in Tantra, and as just a general spiritual practice, philosophy, way of life, I focus more on relationships and sexuality, and to just call that Tantra to me is just not really honoring the whole world of Tantra in itself. So I like to say that I teach sacred sexuality, but I also combine my teachings with psychology, with science, because I started with a degree in human sexuality and psychology. So I have my base in science, and then as I was studying that, I discovered sacred sexuality, and it kind of made the science and the technical stuff look a little bit dry and bland. So I realized there's so much more I can be teaching people that can really be nourishing their souls, that and their experiences in this world and their hearts, that I just couldn't just through basic schooling, just science and psychology. I needed to really study the spiritual aspect of sexuality and romantic love as well.
Wow, beautifully said. And there's a few things that popped up as you're mentioning that. So Tantra being the first thing, and Tantra in its highest form is energy exchange. That's what I've come to know. And so tantric exchanges happen through conversation. If you know how to feel energy, if you know how to transmute it, you tune into somebody's energetic frequency when you exchange, and you reflect the opposite. And that's when, male and women come together, you can be the embodiment of the opposite pole, even though you have those within you. But, you're mentioning studying the scientific aspect. And, if you study psychology, you understand Freud and all of these different psychologists. A lot of that was based off the sexual needs, right? Because, that's one of the governing factors with human psychology, because, we need to replicate to be able to survive. And, the masculine aspect, or the logical aspect, right, is reading the textbooks and understanding blah, blah, blah. But it's the word that came up when you said that was juicy, because when you experience the felt sense of sacred sexuality, which is the exact perfect way to say it, thank you, it is that element of feeling. And that's when you transcend the masculine to more that feminine element, where it becomes a feeling thing for both male and female. You feel it. And you need that, because it's you can read books a million times and there's a collection of information that, I'm not going to externalize this. I've gone through process of just learning, but then it's doing. And then especially, in something as pleasurable as sex or a sexual exchange, sacred sexuality, when you do get to experience things that are so far out of the paradigm with the collective, the general collective, it does really help to break paradigms down, because, what people can do with sexual energy is, you can create life, right? At the end of the day, what else could you want to do? That's beautiful that you work in that field. So how do you find, this is a great question. What do you find is the biggest things that most people don't realize are the initial hurdles to experiencing more in their love life with some of your clients?
I find that when people come to me, the number one thing is they feel alone. So they feel like they're going through whatever issue they have completely alone. Yeah. Even I also work part-time at a sex toy shop. Okay. And people come in all day wanting like pills and stuff, or just some quick solution in regards to if they like ejaculate prematurely. I'm doing quotation marks because prematurely is whatever you define it as. Or if they have a hard time maintaining an erection, and they feel completely alone in these issues. That's the number one thing that I think it's important for me to help them with, is just making them realize they're not alone. They have someone that they can completely explore these issues with without judgment, and feeling like they have a friend. Yeah. Like, or just a partner to help them through this. I think that's so important when it comes to sexual issues and relationship issues. Like when a relationship is going through a rough time, a lot of the times people feel very isolated in that relationship. They feel so alone in that relationship, and to like bring someone else into that is just a powerful first step to cutting that isolation off. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So true. So true. And like this element of needing and being vulnerable in the world that we have to feel like put on all these masks and all these frontiers. But, really it's about finding the people we're comfortable to surrender to allow that to come through. That's what I've had to experience in my own life, but I'm sure that may or may not resonate with your experiences with who you're interacting with. Very interesting. With your work that you're doing right now, what is it that you're projecting to move forward? Like, how is it that you feel like you can help people the most with your, with the sensual sorcery?
Yeah. I really just, my focus right now, like, especially in the last few days, really feeling into it, has been like breaking the idea of what people think sexuality and their love lives should look like. Because it's so deeply in us, this idea of what sex looks like, what relationships look like. And when they don't fit that, which no relationship and no sex life does, we're made to feel broken. Something's wrong with us. We need to be fixed. And so really breaking that idea of that we should be doing things a certain way, things should look a certain way. That's like really my focus in this moment in time. I'm really like feeling into that a lot right now. Yeah.
That's so synchronistic. So I believe you're in a relationship. Is that right?
I am.
Yeah. So as somebody that's single, like I literally had, I'm really blessed to have met some beautiful people on my journeys. But lately, I literally had a couple nights ago a situation where like it was hilarious how it happened. I don't generally like tell full stories, like nothing happened, but I met this person by simply, I was walking with a basketball at a bar because this bar like had a basketball court. So I'm like, well, I'm going to play basketball. This is awesome. And then as I'm walking down with the basketball, a woman was just like pointing at me. She's like, you're that guy. I'm like, cool. Like, that was just like the start of this interaction. We started, I took her to the basketball court. We introduced some of my friends and we were just having conversations and the whole thing was playful. It was fun. But when we started talking, one-on-one, she started doing the exact thing that you're saying. It's like, we're going to go one date, and then we're going to go on 2 dates, and then, we take you out to dinner, and then it was like, why is this the structure? Why does it have to be a certain way? And where did you get that information from? Like, how much of this, like, tonight is quote unquote normal? Usually it's the guy that has to go and instigate it with the girl. In this situation, it was the opposite. So like this whole idea, this programming, because I for me, what it is that I have liked to, that has been the focus or things that have come through for me is just seeing how patterns emerge and see how that, really does dictate how the masses, feel like they need to operate, right? Because when we look at words like his story, it's all about stories that are repeated, and then we repeat them to ourselves, and then that becomes our paradigm, the placebo effect. And, one of the biggest things is as mammals, what we need is human connection. And we're so constantly divided between you're this, blah, blah, blah. And then on top of that, the other layer, as you're mentioning, is like this, how things are supposed to be based on what other people tell you. It's very interesting. How did you first break out of that? Like, I guess, what was your initial introduction? What was it specifically about Tantra that drew you? And, well, I guess you did mention that you got involved in Tantra from you studying psychology, but was that something a lot of other friends that were looking at it too, they were interested in as well? What was it about it specifically for you that was like, okay, this is the way to go?
Yeah, well, in regards to what you were saying before, I always had a different idea of what relationships and sex should look like because I grew up with a single lesbian mom. who had me through a sperm donor. So I wasn't even born through sex.
Interesting.
Which is like ironic because I teach sex and I was like one of the few people in the world not born through sex.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So I always grew up looking at sex and relationships as very different from other people. Like I never thought I had to get married to a man one day, or I had to have a family that looked a certain way, or sex had to be between a man and a woman. I never grew up with that. So in a way, I kind of had an advantage to be able to teach this type of stuff.
Yep.
And have an open mind to this kind of work. But so I got into Tantra. Actually, it's so like millennial, but I got into it through YouTube because have you ever heard of Adina Rivers?
That sounds so familiar, but I can't picture her at the moment.
So I'll like send you a link after this to her account. But so she puts on YouTube just like very heart-based sacred sexuality videos but they'll be very clickbaity. They'll be like, oh, like how to give an amazing blowjob or something. But then once you actually watch it, it's so like heart-based and so not just mechanical. Yeah. So it was the first time I saw someone talk about sex in a way that was in the feminine, like in the feeling body as she talked about it, the things she was saying using ancient practices. And it expanded me. It made me realize things like this existed, this kind of teaching existed. And through that, I just found more and more teachers, did more and more workshops, and committed to my own practices from that. So it really all started from YouTube, which is insane.
Yeah, YouTube is amazing right now. Like literally we live in a space and time which we're, blessed beyond our imagination, where everything's at the click of a button. Ignorance is now a choice. It's, in the future or in the past, it hasn't been. But now we literally can access this information through clicking a few buttons, irrespective of what the title says. Wow, okay.
That's why I find like my Instagram and like what I put on social media like so important for me, because if I can impact one person, if one person like sees my Instagram or sees my website or something and it brings them on the start of their journey, then that like my mission's done. Yeah. Wow,
that's so powerful. That's so synchronistic and synergistic with what it is that I'm looking to do. Because, some people, as you said, you had a very interesting life path to put you where you are now. The same for me. It's like, I've experienced things that people were interested in, and, I'm not trying to say better or worse, but my life has been different to the point where I'm at now. It's like, if anybody's interested in what I've learned and, still knowing that I don't know anything and still like, constantly going through that process of refining, if I can give you what I feel is the most potent things that I've had to learn now, then when you're 2 years down the path, you're going to be teaching me. That's how it works, right? We give, we receive, we give, we receive. We be the masculine, we be this force, and then we then revert back to the receiving phase, because that's how the cycles work in my understanding currently. But that's beautiful, and that's what I feel. The basics of humanity can be lost when we look at the general populace because of, again, conditioning, feelings that come up, ideas of how things should be based off what they're told. And, I don't want to go outside of the realms of relationships, because I think this is very important. I'm personally, and you may look at this completely different, I'm personally experiencing a lot of friction between male and females, just on a general scale. Like, it's not to say everybody, but when I go out and somebody that, currently my masculine is very hot right now, like, and I'm not meaning to be, and it's not, I'm trying to be egoic with it, because I'm still, through the whole Venus retrograde, my intention was to yield to the feminine, right? To balance that within myself. But when I noticed that, hold on a second, like I'm embodying the masculine energy and I'm speaking, forward, I'm being linear in the way that I'm expressing, some people do get offended by it. And there is this kind of like, in being a male, it's what I'm experiencing. You being a female, you'll experience something from the opposite pole. But like a real strong polarization in a lot of circles between, male, female. And, us as a general populace really not understanding the roles of what each is, the role. And again, I'd love to hear your perspective of what I've come and understand is when we look at the masculine, that's the positive, that's the linear, but at the same time too, that doesn't make it better or worse than the negative, which is the feminine, because the feminine is the darkness. It's the womb that gives birth. If you don't have the feminine, you don't have anything. If there's any God, it's the woman, like not the man, it's the woman. Like that's just common sense, right? But you need the light, which would be associated with the male, because that penetrates the womb. And then that's what the male is. Like the father is the farmer. They plant seeds, but a responsible father will be there to cultivate. And it's not like the dictators that we see now, do this. It's like, no, I'm going to watch you grow, and I'm going to continuously give you the love that I want you to be the best you can be, because you're me, right? And then the mother has the different role, because, we have this idea that the feminine's weak. When we transcend the idea of females being feminine and males being masculine, like, no, like there's the feminine and masculine energy. There's the female and male lion. There's the female and male plant. Then there's the female and male human, right? So they all have feminine and male correspondence. But it's actually in the animal kingdom, most females are the ones you don't want to fuck with, especially when you're messing with your kids. They're the warriors. But we've lost that. We have this idea that to be feminine is to be weak. And like there is the surrender, because, if you're, as you mentioned before, with women that might come to you for sex toys, when you can surrender and not feel like you're in danger, that's when life flows. But if you're constantly like, you see some guys walking around like this and keeping it in their body because they feel they have to project an energy, that tension doesn't allow that to happen. So I guess to bring it back to what I'm noticing in terms of this confusion with what feminine and male is, because, I have conversations with women that are feminists, but they don't realize a lot of the traits they're pushing out are masculine. And it's like, that's not good or bad, but, what you're mentioning to me, it's very contradictory to what you're actually doing. And the same for men. I see a lot of femininity in men, which is not a bad thing. I've got a lot of feminine within me. But it's like, until you're conscious of it, you may not be able to work with it in your own role. So I guess I know that was a bit of a tangent there, but I would love to hear, I guess, what your perception is, being someone that works in this industry in many different ways in your own business, femininity and masculinity in how you're embodying it, and how, you're helping people embody it out externally, like, however which way you want to speak, I guess.
Well, something that came up for me when you were talking is when I get into a really like deep state of like doing ritual and really like feeling at the height of my power, like energetically when I'm calling things in, or dancing in a certain way, I actually get scared, because I feel like I'll look in the mirror while I'm doing this, and I'll actually feel like I look evil, or I'll feel evil. Mm. And it's actually, I realize we've associated powerful women with with being evil. Mm. And that's with like the witchcraft trials, with just vilifying powerful women. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So like really coming into your true power as like a woman, we've actually completely like viewed that as like an evil type of bitch, or like a bad thing. Mm-hmm. So when women are actually coming into like the power of their feminine, they don't even know how to recognize that as a positive thing. Mm. Yeah, like we've taught them to actually be scared of their own power in the feminine. So they only know, a lot of women associate power, good power, as being in power in the masculine. Mm. Because that's seen as like positive in our society. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like the power of the like masculine is really like going, getting what they want, being really like forward thinking, forward moving. That's like being in the power of the masculine. But being in the power of the feminine is attracting that. Yeah, yes. Like inward. But that's associated as like with all these negative things. It's like manipulative, as like scary, evil energy. Yeah. So we think being in our power is being in our masculine.
Completely true. And as a guy, you're, when I tried to, at one point I was potentially wanting to play professional rugby. So, there was a lot of things I was doing to try and, go down that road. But being empathic and, having a lot of feelings and not necessarily like relating to a lot of the other guys around me, definitely, a lot of programming for guys, you have to be masculine to be this. It's only until I got a lot more older and I had a lot more humbling experiences to be like, it's the feminine that's the power source for the creation of life, right? Like that's, again, my understanding. I'm not a woman, so I can't tell a woman how she should or shouldn't feel. But something that came up for me really interestingly is you talked about being fearful of the power. That is so true. And when you look at, the most prominent religion in Western culture, Christianity, there's no female in the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, right? And, I studied some aspects of this. So there isn't, trying to break away the feminine, because Jesus, as we depict him, is a white woman. Even though he's supposedly the king of the Jews, right? And what Jewish people look like is nothing like this white, feminine-looking person that they depict as Jesus. But there was a layer with religions that is trying to distort and divert the sexual expression. Because, before Christianity came in and said, oh, you're not allowed to have sex before marriage, or Catholicism, the pagans, the people that were connected, the different occult groups, they knew the power of creation. And they weren't scared of it. They were in harmony with it. Whereas we've been so vilified. And when you look at epigenetics, how many women were killed and tortured and honestly on the run because if anybody said, oh, she's a witch, bang, she's dead. If we don't think that's still stored in the trauma of us individually, like, we don't know what we are. But it is very much like, if we look at the leaders we have now, right? I don't have to say names, but there's a lot of masculine leaders that's like, look, guys, this is probably not the way we want to be going, right? And it's not to say that even some of the female leaders that have come forward, if we look into what their past is, it's like, just because you're a man or woman doesn't make you good or bad. And that's just basic common sense. But we need people to understand, and for women and men to really understand their own level. So I don't know why I just came out just as women, but it's for all of us to realize that we all have this within us, and we need to realize what's been done in the past, because that needs to be addressed so people can be comfortable moving forward, which is why people like yourself doing this work is so important.
Yeah, it's so interesting that most people in this world have no idea, like they never even think, or it never crosses their mind about like the pain of their ancestors. Yeah.
Yes.
Like it never even crosses their mind. They think all their issues have to do with just them.
Yeah, so true. And with my path, there's a level that I had to, it actually came full circle when I had to realize the responsibility of being here comes down to my great ancestor, who was a female or male, whichever, both, that literally we have first world problems now, right? Oh, my internet's not too quick. Oh, this coffee doesn't blah, 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 right? And people get upset about it. There was a time where this gets me emotional. We're literally, it's coming through right now. When you had a family, this is when we talk about the family role. As the man, you had your wife, you had your kid. There was a tiger trying to kill your kid. There was a dinosaur out there. Your role, and it wasn't because, oh, I'm a man this way. It's like, no, you are more physically capable than this individual. You love them. You protect them, right? That's our ancestors. This is in our DNA. This is what they had to go through to get us here, right? And then that's the tip of the spear, right? We go all the way down, all the different things that have happened to males and females and children, like the pain that we've experienced. And I say we because we're all one, right? And that's why we need to transmute it as we move forward. And you're helping me do this, so thank you for this. I can feel the energy coming through, so thank you, sister. But it is the truth that we need to know that there is actually a responsibility. Like, a lot of this is, we realize in this time and space, we're here to plant seeds. We're here to give, not necessarily to take. And although the feminine is the paradox, right? The feminine does receive from the universe, right? From the energies that be, but we then have to transmute that in the physical. Well, this is how I'm perceiving it, being the male, that I need to give back. And you're doing the same thing in your own way, which is beautiful. But, that really triggered that for me. So thank you for that. Thank you for the clearing. But it's most definitely.
Yeah, I come from, I'm Jewish, so my ancestors have been through so much pain, just constant persecution. So for me and like my family, I've noticed it's like we're always drawn to be in a constant state of anxiety or depression because we just subconsciously always feel like we're being attacked. And I lived in Israel for a bit, and I was actually being constantly attacked just for being Jewish. Just the time I was there, it was like bad timing. But yeah, so I have to consciously tell myself I'm safe because my subconscious doesn't know I'm safe because I come with all these like ancestral wounds, as a lot of us do. So you have to constantly remind your body that you're safe, and like your subconscious doesn't really understand words very well. So like feeling like and like picturing yourself being safe. So like just if you're like literally hugging yourself or just like imagining something you in a place that makes you feel safe can really help with that. And just like reminding your subconscious like you are safe. You are not under attack. Everything is okay.
Yeah.
To not constantly be drawing in drama or like making up scenarios in your head that aren't really there. Like I find I'm attracted to doing. If everything is good, I will make issues in my life because that just feels like the natural state of what should be happening for my body. And then I have to stop and remind myself like, no, everything is okay. Everything's perfect. And like feeling into that, not just saying it. Yeah.
So beautiful. Outside of this conversation, I'm actually going to try and send you some things that I'm going to be working with. It's actually a remedy that works on a cellular level to actually release the water storage, which actually does work on an epigenetic level. I'll link you a few things. You can actually listen to the man that creates this, but I experienced this and I had some crazy, like not even the etheric aspects. I had people that you would say, and I use parentheses, betrayed me. And again, was so programmed into my subconscious that I wasn't realizing that I was always looking out for this specific scenario to happen, where people out of the blue, I forgot about this consciously, literally text me to apologize what had happened just by using this particular thing. Again, like you'll experience it yourself. If you want, I'll send you some free samples because I'm just trying to share this with people. But please remind me if I forget to send you a few things later on. But no, that was such a, awesome. Yeah, and thank you for that because, that if I was to take, I guess, the time back literally to the start of last month when the whole Venus retrograde cycle happened, Venus being an interesting planet is definitely associated with the feminine, but with what I study with human design and helping people understand their own makeup, the energies present were very potent in releasing these ancestral fears. Now, this may drop and change, so let me know if you're not following the thread I'm trying to make here. But there's a lot of ascension cycles people talk about, and there was this is all based off the real time, which is either the planet moving certain ways or the stars moving in certain ways. So 2012, the Mayans predicted was the end of the 5th sun to the 6th sun, or I believe so. It was the 4th to the 5th to the 6th. So, the new age made it out to be the end of the world. And obviously when that didn't happen, people were like, oh, this is all bullshit. The whole 2012 thing was bullshit. But what the Mayans actually was saying was that the world was going to change from being complacent in a certain cycle to going through a period of unease. That was, I believe it was 2012 to 2022, could be even 2028. And then from there would be the new epoch, right? And, the divergence of the timelines, whether people want to quote unquote ascend or descend. Please do your own research, anybody listening to this, because that's my level of understanding based on what I've come across. Now, the reason why I said that is if I go back, if I knew you in 2012 and I said to you, I'll give you $1 million and I'll bet you right now Donald Trump will be president in 6 years, you would take that bet any day of the week, right? The world we live in now compared to 6 years ago is completely different. Technology, we have a robot that is a citizen of the earth right now. No one's talking about AI and transhumanism. We have so much genetic manipulation that we have so many things that are affecting people's DNAs that we're not even talking about. But all that aside, we literally have so much more conscious information right now that's trying to peek its head through the matrix that is there if people are looking for it. Now, the Venus retrograde we just experienced from one of my teachers, one of my mentors, he was telling me that based on the lining of the astrology, this, for those that started the initial awakening cycle, and again, I say initial, but there's several people wake up all the time. People do it in different levels. You know, some people is a bit more gradual. Other people is like, bam, I got out of my body. I know there's something up. I need to figure out what's going on. Now, I use this time as somebody that's still balancing my masculine and feminine. I'm by no means there, but I'm constantly working towards that, to embody both those divine aspects. I had a lot to do with the feminine, and, you know, I'm so grateful for that. But where I'm at right now is so much more comfortable in my masculine because of that, you know, and because, you know, me as a guy trying to figure out my role as a guy in this world, you know, there's a lot of it you try to figure out, you think you need to figure out the male thing first. And what I've come to experience is like, no, it's actually had to start with me coming to terms with my femininity first to then be comfortable to be the man that I am. And I'd just love to know if that's something that you've experienced with not just your partner, your lover, or if there's, you know, other clients that you're working with that have come into that same awareness, or, you know, however which way you feel that things are coming up for you. But it's just something I personally resonated with, and you work in this field specifically. So I'm sure there's a lot of amazing stories that you've had.
In regards to, are you talking about in regards to, like, let's say if I was experiencing my masculine and not like empowering my feminine?
Perhaps, yeah, that could be a way to go about it. Or just your own personal balancing.
Yeah, like, I think in regards to like just my business, getting that going, I need to be in my masculine. Like, there's no getting away from it. To start a business, that's just what you have to do. Like, the masculine is like getting things going. And yeah, that just, one day it hit me. I was just like, I don't have a choice anymore. I need to start this. Because for like 5 years I've been studying what I've been studying, and it's just been like living inside me. I've been embodying it. And then like my masculine one day like awakened and was like, no, I need you now. Like, it's time for you to be used and like to become alive in you. So I couldn't express my feminine in the world without my masculine coming out and being in power. Yeah. Because you need it in order to express that into the world. So it completely like empowered my feminine to shine by letting my masculine like lead the way. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And like in regards to like my partner, yeah, like he like being with me, I feel like really allowed him to like be in his feelings and like be in his feminine for the first time, like in a safe place. And that like, and I think what really empowers like the masculine and men is really like being in your masculine from a heart space, from like a place of the heart, as opposed to just being with it like mindlessly or like like not consciously, but really like going forward with things and going forward with what your intentions are, and really like being in your consciousness from a place of the heart. And that is where your feminine comes into play, because you can't do that without your feminine being present and like feeling as you're moving forward instead of just moving forward.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Because even if you do that, right, it's similar to how you were talking about studying, but with just the intellectualizing, there's no juiciness, there's no feeling, so there's no life to it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because being alive is a feeling. Like, if you're dead, you just are.
That's truth at the end of the day. That's so true.
Yeah. So, like, I think we have like an obsession almost with zombies in our culture, because a lot of us are zombies.
Thank you for saying that. I don't understand why everyone was dressing up as like dead people for Halloween. I literally was asking people like, why? Like, you look good, you do look nice, but like, why is everyone dressed like they want to die? Like, people don't see like the programming that, you know, the masses are being like, okay, this is what we think is cool. It's like, we're promoting life, not death.
And if you think about it, like in a lot of zombie movies and stuff, zombies move really slowly. Like, they're not really that much of a threat. They're very easy. You can kill them very easily, but there's something scary about them, and there's still this big threat, even though they're not even like aggressive or have like crazy powers. They're literally just like slow moving dead people.
Yes.
And like the reason they're so scary is because that they like we see ourselves in them.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for articulating it. That's something that I've been thinking about, but no one said it that way. There was there was a quote that's coming to mind right now, and it's talking about that passive state that people, that, you know, cattle, like there are chattel, there are human beings, and I don't want to say this with any malice because I had to come to terms with this. There are people that are so content with not wanting to change that they're happy to be just like just be there, like nothing more than experience life. They're just happy to be a cattle, like, and for the life of me, I do not understand it, to the point where, like, I'll be going onto a bus to get to work. There'll be people that are standing with all their luggage literally on both sides of the aisles right in the front of the bus when there's 10 people trying to walk through. Nobody has any kind of intellectual wherewithal to be like, maybe if I move over there, people can walk through. And it gets to a point where I have to initiate it, because I'm thinking common sense is not common now. Yo, I'm going to need you to move there so I can go here. I'm not being a dick, but it's like there's 10 people behind me that we all want to fit on. It's not just about you right now, it's about us. And it's so prevalent in our society that we have people that are just there to take up space, that don't want to be more. Or I should say it from this way, they don't realize they can be more. Or if presented with information, they may not be open to actually implementing it and actualizing it. Because at the end of the day, you do need to be humbled to realize the amount of work that needs to be done, or how much we've potentially been told that we need to rewire, re-educate. And that can be confronting for people that have spent so much time focusing on something and realize, hold on, maybe I've focused on something that isn't correct.
Yeah, I think also, like, let's say people are growing, but they're just not growing in a way we understand. So, like, we're all here for different reasons. So for you and me, it could be growth spiritually. And for other people, it could be like growth when it comes to like athleticism. And for you and me, or for me, I don't know about you, but like for me, I'm not even, like, I could not do that. Like, my body is not made to do like any kind of athletic anything.
Okay.
So yeah, so like I can't understand other people's experiences. Like, we're all meant to grow in different kinds of ways, and we just may not understand other people's type of growth, and they may not understand us. Yeah, like for a lot of people, we may be speaking gibberish to them, and like they think we're just kooky, you know?
So true. So
we can't judge other people's experiences. Yeah.
So true. So true. And no, so true. I thank you for that. Thank you for that. That's so true. And to know that on whatever path that you're on, you going up and going down, you're going to go to the same place eventually. And I'm only coming from the spiritual perspective because, again, that's what this life for me is about. I know this based on things that I've had to experience. And again, as you mentioned, which you said it so eloquently and so true, that just because this is my perspective, that doesn't take away from the other person being their own co-creator and needing the experience that they need. And, you know, that's why these conversations are potent, because we may be speaking on spiritual topics right now, but I've been blessed to connect with people in different realms that when we do have conversation, we see the similarities in what we're viewing. And then through that, we realize, okay, we're all wanting the same thing. Well, I feel, you know, whether it's love, essentially, we all want to feel love. We want to feel fulfillment. We want to feel that what we're doing is important to the rest of us. Like, I feel like when you stand in your power of who you are as your unique piece of the puzzle, that's when you shine. Because it's like, I don't need to be better than you. I don't need to be better. Like you said, you weren't athletic. I'm sure that when we stop the recording, you might do a double, triple backflip and be like, oh, you know, I was just being modest. But it's like, everybody has their own gift, right? And it doesn't matter. And that was like, when we go from a hierarchy to more of a heterarchy, which is, you know, for you, your gift is understanding the layers of embodying sacred sexuality through your own unique path through life, you know, being born to a lesbian mother from a sperm donor. You know, again, you can't write this. It is who you are. The DNA that has been embodied in you, you know, the activation you had, that gives you your own uniqueness. And we live in a world where it's like people try to meld into this zombie, this transhuman, like, you know, there's very clear characters. When you walk onto the street, you see people dressed in certain ways. You're like, okay, this is a business guy. Or when people are like a hipster, there's like, okay, you can tell this person's a, you know, quote unquote hipster, you know, just based on the costumes we put on. And it is interesting because there's layers of it that I resonate with, because, yeah, you know, we all have our individuality. But then there is also this collective that is also here too, that there's no reason why it shouldn't be. Like, it's not just because I think this way that everybody else should be disappear. Like, no. You need everything to be in unison to be able to have the full expression, in my belief.
Yeah, and like also just seeing other people as like a reflection of yourself. Just in, yeah, like for example, like my partner, he likes playing video games like a lot of guys do, and at first I would kind of judge it, and then I looked at why is he doing that, and it's so he can get out of his head, yeah, and just be like in the moment and just be like, that's his way to relax and get out of his head. And for me, like I'll do like sensual dance or like my like erotic practices, because that helps me get out of my head and in the moment, yeah, and like gives me a break from just being heady and mundane life. So I would judge him for doing that, but really we're trying to get the same thing out of both of those totally different practices.
Yeah. And you need that reflection of the opposite to see where you stand and see where somebody else stands. It's a funny thing to walk, the whole reflection, because it is true. So true. You see the internal externalized, but then you also see some completely unique individual co-creator with their own internalness that's being projected out too. So it's like you balance it all out. It's interesting.
Yeah, and like relationship for me is like the biggest mirror I've ever had to deal with. Yeah. It's like, it's a spiritual practice in itself, like every day being in a relationship, I think.
Yeah. How long have you been together, if you don't mind me asking?
A year.
Okay. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah. It's like the first relationship where I feel like truly like empowered by it. And like not drained at all. Like I gain energy from it instead of like putting all my energy towards it. I feel like I actually am like gaining new energy and like new life from it, which is totally new experience.
Wow. And obviously your intention, I'm sure, is to help other people experience that as well.
Yeah, but the thing is, I'm a believer that this kind of controversial view, but even if you're in like if you're in a bad relationship, even if it's a bit like abusive in certain ways, I don't think you can force yourself to be done with someone or leave a relationship. Because if you do that, you'll always go back. Because that lesson isn't learned yet. That chapter isn't done.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree with this.
So, yeah, like I've been in relationships and where I knew it wasn't right for me, but I also was aware that I was not ready for it to be over yet. Like it was not ready for it to be done for whatever reason, and just trusting in that. And obviously if you're like, if your safety is at risk, that's another story. But yeah, like until you really feel like you don't have a choice but to break up, like you were constantly thinking about breaking up, it probably, the story hasn't run its course yet, or the relationship hasn't run its course yet.
Okay.
So I don't think like, even I think people can go their whole lifetimes without being in a healthy relationship and still learning so much, but in that lifetime they weren't ready to meet their life partner.
Okay.
Yeah.
2 questions came to mind with that. So number one, and I'm only asking this from a male perspective to a female. One, how much of that is based on the programming that a lot of women are unfortunately subjected to, that they deserve? Well, they don't deserve to be happy, or they don't deserve to feel beautiful. You know, there's almost like they're looking for someone to criticize them, to be like, oh, maybe, yeah, they are right, I'm not this. And the second question is, how much do you think that the feminine, which does like drama, because it is the destroyer, like that's another thing about the feminine, that's why it's not weak, it destroys to then create, destroys to create. How much of it is also the enjoyment of the emotional spikes that come with very passionate relationships? Because again, drama is not a bad thing. Drama is a great thing in relationships, right? Because, it also helps to build like the anticipation for sex and all these different things that we experience. But do you find that could be 2 big factors in, these repeated cycles of constantly coming into negative, or what we say would be negative, even though they are very beautiful experiences to learn from?
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely an amazing point. But I think people we're brought in those relationships to teach us those lessons. Yeah. Like we can't learn love without darkness, or we can't learn or like lightness without dark. Yeah. So we're brought the dark in order to find the light within it. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that.
I wouldn't be able to like be prepared for the relationship I'm in now if I didn't go through completely like toxic, horrible relationships, because I was able to like come out from that with light.
That's it.
Yeah.
And like we used the word judgments before, but judgments aren't a bad thing in terms of like, okay, or preferences is a better word. I've had this experience. I don't want that again. So I'll set my boundary out to be like, okay, I'm noticing this go this way. I'm just saying this is what I don't want to experience. And then that way you can very quickly know if you're going down the right path with this individual. Well, that's from my experience, because all I've learned to do is fail forward, bang my head against the wall, go in a different direction. Like, okay, that didn't work. Okay, let's try that. No, sweet, that's a bit better. I'm going to do that instead.
Yeah. Yeah, if you really like truly feel like it's your time to meet your life partner, I think a powerful practice to attract that also is like saying no a lot.
Okay.
You know, that's so powerful. Like, yeah, like if you you're not ready to continue those patterns, like you truly feel that in your body, then start saying no and like stop hoping for a different outcome. Because with like similar type of people, or if you notice like someone's treating you a certain way, you always have the power to say no. But I'm trying to say you can't force yourself to say no. If your body truly feels like they need to continue those patterns to try to find something, then you can't force that. You'll just keep attracting it. But if you truly feel ready not to attract that anymore, then you can say no, and that will attract the yes.
Wow. You don't understand the synchronicity in that. I just finished the podcast and he finalized everything. When we talk about the matrix, because again, that's an element that we did on the last podcast, at Neo's apex, when he quote unquote transcended, what he did to Agent Smith was he said no. And that word no actually symbolizes the feminine, because 0 is the womb. And it's through that no that the other opportunities arise to potentially be. And here you are saying the same thing, the divine feminine embodied right here. Thank you for that. That needed to be heard. Okay.
The universe loves filling empty space. Yeah.
Yes.
So if you leave that empty space, then you have to trust that the universe will fill it and nourish that space. So let's say someone's in a relationship with someone, they don't want to be in that relationship. They don't feel fulfilled. They're just staying in it until someone else better comes along, right? Like they're ready to leave that relationship, but they're just waiting because they don't want to be alone. They won't attract that life partner, that soul partner, because there's no space for the universe to fill, because it's already being taken up by someone else who's not right for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, this will be very interesting to dive in a bit, because as a guy, I value my singleness right now. And, it's not to say that I'm not blessed to be spending time with other beautiful people, both friends and, romantic partners, but I know enough about what it is that I need to be doing that I don't want to be distracted. Not to say that a partner's not going to do that, but I'm having to learn to really be mindful of my time, and, at the cost of potentially having more deeper relationships with people that could be that one. But I've noticed that, an element of the feminine, which I love, is the fact that they do want to spend time. And again, I don't want to paint every female with the same broad strokes, but a lot of the women that I've been connecting with, like there is the element of wanting to spend as much time as possible together, which is great. I love that when there's the time and space for that. And, that's kind of where I noticed that the embodiment that I have to come through in my masculine is, okay, well, these are like in terms of the structures and me knowing linearly that I need to be able to pay my rent. So that means I need to leave here at this time in order for me to get to work. And then like, I'll have a conversation with somebody, we'll start something and it's like, yo, we've been 2 hours talking about this, but I told you like at the start, I need to be leaving in 30 minutes. And then it's like, then there's like the game that happens and it's like, okay, so I've got to go. I'm going to go. And that was just, a very small snippet of one experience, but it's just a noticing that there are certain people that feel like they need, and not even just women, so this is men too, they feel they need to be around somebody all the time. And just based off what you said before, that you do need to have that empty space for something to fill. Do you personally, and again, not to judge, because each person is different. Do you find that there is a layer of people that we do need to find the balance between the isolation and the togetherness? And also too, for some people that feel they need to be in a relationship, like, is that something that you find that there's a lot of people that you actually might need to say, well, look, you actually need to be single for a little bit, because, you need that time to yourself to be able to know yourself, to be able to know what you want to attract and not to attract?
Yeah. Well,
That was a big question.
Couple of thoughts on that. I think, like, in regards to you feeling like you're attracting women who always want to be with, like, around you, and you don't want someone like that. If you truly believe you want someone who values their own space and isn't super, like, wants a lot of closeness, then you have to set your boundaries with that. And if they can't respect that, then you have to end it in order to make room for someone who wants the same things as you. Because if you keep accommodating that and just thinking every woman wants that, then that's what you're going to keep attracting. Yeah. Because there are tons of women who want a lot of space. Like, that's how they are relationally. And then there are lots of men who want a lot of closeness. It's just about what kind of relational pattern you want, or what kind of relationship you're looking for. Yeah. We all have different things we're looking for. So just to, like, really be clear in what you want and not settling for anything else. Even though that might be hard, but that's the only way you'll truly attract that, if that's really what you want. Well, it could be some shadowy shit where you don't want true intimacy, but you'll only know that. Yeah.
Well, I definitely agree with you 100%. And it's funny because I felt, and again, this is one experience, and there's been a lot of different, and, you are right. I met a lot of women that was the opposite. The way that we interacted, I actually wanted to meet up with them more. But as you said, it's different. Everyone's different. But I noticed that there was a game that was being played with certain people. And it's not to say that some of these were not even romantic situations, they were friendships. But it became like that game of, like, okay, this is what the boundary was set, and then we're going to test the boundary. And then just by me holding that and actually saying, I'm going, like, I know what I need to do, therefore I'm going, that then, like, stoked the fires even more. And then there was more of an attraction for that, because from what I personally believed in this, we're only talking about one experience here, that person wasn't used to having someone with boundaries or someone with that structure before. And therefore, when they saw that, they wanted to test it. And then when it was tested, and in this case, it was like, no, this is what it was, then there was an attraction there. Because that's the interesting thing about the feminine, the way that, for me, the way that I perceived it is, the more you can hold yourself to your integrity of what it is that you're looking for. Because at the end of the day, it's like what I consciously think that I want, and again, subconsciously might be a different thing. But the conscious thing that I'm pushing out there, the more I can actually stay true to that, I will attract that which holds that, wants that. But then there are elements that, I believe if you look at Shiva, what Shiva represents, or Kali, the destructive being, she'll come down and she'll destroy all that doesn't hold that force or that fire. And then those that stay true won't be burnt up because, again, you're facing the dragon. So, okay, this is what I said I wanted. I'm going to be here. As scary as this fucker will be, I'm going to be here. And then if you, transcend the flames as one analogy, then that's like, again, yielding to the power of the feminine, because that if it wanted to kill you, it'll kill you. But it's like, well, hey, I'm here. If I'm going to be here, I'm going to be here. That's what I'm choosing to do. And that is like both the ignorance and the beauty of the masculine in certain ways, because, if you do stand for something, that you can assist others in that process. And I know that kind of went on a few different tangents there, but that's just how I'm noticing when I'm interacting with, either younger souls or people that are a lot more mature than me that I'm learning from. It's like, there's so many layers to it. And as you said, it's like to each their own, but I feel like it definitely was about that holding that frame or holding that boundary, and then being quick to cut it. It seems like what you've had to learn, and you were sharing with me, if that's correct.
Yeah. Well, when you're expressing these boundaries to these women, most women, and a lot of men too, but especially women, because we're not taught to do so, don't know how to express boundaries or to even realize their own boundaries. We're taught to just accommodate to other people. Yeah. So when you express their boundaries, they're going to become even more attracted to you because we're attracted to what we want, what we don't have.
Yeah.
So they're just being attracted to that. They're probably being attracted to you as a person as well. But that's going to make you even more attractive because you're expressing a quality that they don't understand and that they respect and they want. So they want to learn from you, but they don't realize that's what's going on.
So true. So true. I really like sharing this perspective because, like, you know, you're definitely helping me a lot with my integration because there comes to a point where when I was a lot younger, I got involved with the pickup. It's funny because pickup actually got me onto spirituality, funnily enough.
I'm just going to charge my computer. 1 second.
No, that's okay. Do you want me to pause the recording? Or can you hear me?
Okay. It's charged. No problem.
Oh, all good. All good. Just as a heads up too, probably another 20 minutes. So I'll make sure there's plenty of time for us to both, you know, for you to finalize and say things on your end as well, because I want people to be able to reach out to you as well. This has been a great conversation so far. And I'd love to speak again in future too. I'd love to keep on hearing more and ask you questions as well next time, especially about my perspective. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So I guess the last thing I'd like to say before obviously opening up and just letting you, you know, express anything that pops up, but it was, as a child, I had a lot of quote unquote spiritual experiences. I saw things that, you know, doesn't make sense, blah, blah, blah. And I actually got very scared of it. You know, that caused me to shut down. But my life path going around, seeing so many perspectives from different angles, you know, as a kid, I would visualize seeing the world through your eyes, for instance, seeing the world from the next man's eyes. Because I don't know why, but that was what I was attracted to as a kid. And now I've come older and I've come to this point in my hero's journey. It's like, okay, I've always wanted to understand others from their perspective because I understand that, like your subjective truth is your subjective truth, but there's an objective truth that just is. And the more we align to that, the more that we actually within the flow of the universe. Now, it was, you know, I had my first love. I've only ever been in one real relationship in terms of like a solid relationship, 3.5 years. And when we broke up, it needed to happen because I wasn't being the man that she was attracted to originally. I wasn't a man at that stage. I think I was 21. I was still like, you know, trying to figure out who I was and still am. But who I was then was still very much not taking the steps that I knew inside I needed to take. And that's the thing, like nobody can tell you need to do this, you need to do that. It's like my intuition was saying, look, you need to step out, you need to do more. And I was fearful of letting go of what I had. Well, that was what I was telling myself. So long story short, I ended up getting quite overweight. I was 130 kilos at one point. You know, all the opportunities I had with sport were falling away. All my friends, I started to be more leechy towards my girlfriend because that was the comfortable thing. Be with her. And obviously she didn't want that. She was a young, beautiful woman. She still is a young, beautiful woman. And she wanted to experience life. And who she fell in love with wasn't who she was with at that point. So she was the one that initially broke up with me and was actually strong enough to say, no, actually, we've broken up, got back together. This is what we need to do. And I thank her for it. I really do. But that caused me to look at what at that point, it was the three main areas of life: health, wealth, and relationships. I need to figure this out. And I got involved in, and before that, I'd heard about guys picking up girls, right? So there was this element of learning that, everything's a social skill, right? So people would go out and try to pick up women, but there were so many people trying to do it. And there was a lot of it that was bullshit. Like, I'm an empathic male. So it's like, I don't resonate with every single guy in the world. I don't resonate with every single female in the world. I just resonate with the energy that's coming off. And there was some of it that I just didn't like. I was overweight. I don't want to dress up like with a freaking peacock hat and do all these other silly things. That's not who I am. Plus, if I do attract somebody like that, it's probably not the kind of person I want to be hanging out with. Not to say good or bad, but it's just like, again, my preferences. So I started trying to pick up women and, learning what they were talking about. And I resonated with the group actually in Melbourne. They're called the Natural Lifestyles. And they actually expressed through their teachings, it's like, well, firstly, you can't trick a woman into liking you. It's not going to happen. They're way more socially smart than you'll ever be, especially being a guy. Plus, it's like if you don't like yourself, like if you don't figure yourself out, then how do you expect somebody else to? And that can happen if you do have the right partner, but you shouldn't expect that from your partner. And so when I first started with the pickup, that kind of fell away after about a couple of months. Then I was like, okay, they offered a meditation course. And that was actually what triggered me and actually got me interested in spirituality. meditation, all these different esoteric practices, which I, being a kid, I kind of was like, oh, actually, there's something here that I resonate with. But, put a long story short, that triggered the next part of my journey. That was about 7-8 years ago. Now it's come full circle where I'm grateful enough to have embodied a lot of the teachings that I've come across, mainly from the spiritual perspective, because from my perspective, everything is spiritual before it becomes physical, right? We live in the third dimension. So everything has to happen the 6/5 fourth before it slows down here. And especially relationships, what that embodies is the universe, right? Because the masculine force needs the feminine force to be able to create the child, which can be anything. It could be the seed that builds the tree. It could be the child that, you and your partner may potentially want to have. It could be anything. It could be the music that I want to write. That is what this whole aspect of Tantra is to me in one form. But having these conversations actually allows me to see more of how we can assist other people in terms of, potentially sharing this perspective, if that's what they resonate with, and realizing that there's a deeper power. Because my challenge right now is to be mature with my sexual energy. I understand that when I start to do certain practices, I become magnetic. And that's my intention, because I'm trying to manifest certain things. But then in the physical level, I will get physical. And again, I don't want to blow smoke up my horn. It's just like you realize that you attract things. And it's not always, whether it's the attraction of a female, it could be males that literally are looking for something to trigger them, right? So it's constantly realizing that when you start to emit energy, people will become drawn to it. So I'm learning now to be respectful with it. And, I'll put myself and be real. It's like, it's not easy for me, somebody with a very high libido, very high energy level, to always constantly do that. But that is the work that I'm focusing on for myself. I know there's no question that's come from this, but I would like to hear how any of this resonates with any of your journey. And just to say, if you met somebody like myself, based on what it is that you do for work, how would you approach this? Not to say that I definitely need to constantly work on myself, but I'd like to finish this last 10, 20 minutes with hearing a lot more about your perspectives on some of the things that I've mentioned. And again, if you can, I'll mention it again at the end, but just to share with your platforms, your emails, so people can really reach out to you and hear more of you speak, because some of it I feel like I've been going on a bit of a monologue, and I apologize.
All good. Yeah, I would say just like, maybe just being more in your flow. Like, I would suggest some dance. Yeah, like, if you feel like total, like very like super like spiked libido, super like kind of like sexually like magnetic, and yeah, like you want to kind of calm that energy down, just like really like being in your body, like moving it and like touching it. Like if you guys can't see, but I'm literally like stroking my arms, stroking my legs, like moving that energy throughout your body, and just like being in it, and like not trying to change it, but just really like feeling in your body. Yeah. And like seeing that like energy you hold is a sacred, beautiful thing, and not shaming yourself for it. Yeah. And if you have a high sex drive, find someone else with a high sex drive. Like, there's so many women that have like such a high sex drive as well, that it's something that you can find and it could be celebrated for. So like celebrate that in yourself. Also, a high libido is a sign of like really good health, like a drive for life. So it's nothing to be ashamed of, or really anything to work on. But yeah, like being a responsible sexual being is also learning when not to express that sexuality and contain that sexual energy, which I've had to learn too, because this is what I do. So sexuality and like sensual energy is always on my mind. So, but in so many situations, it's not necessary or appropriate to show that sexual energy. So really being aware of like containing that, like having a healthy container for that. And also having a healthy container to express that. So if that's like in a place in your house that you like have a like room for, or a space for, or a certain ritual where you really can express that totally. Like for me, before I do my pleasure practices, I'll go into like a specific room in my house, and I'll put like a specific essential oil that I associate pleasure practices with. And then I'll fully let go and express that sensual part of me in that contained space. And so then when I'm out in the world, I can hold that sexual energy in because I know I have a healthy place to express it. Yeah. Because not all of us have like communities where we can express that. But that's, if you can find a community, that's so important. And that's why I'm really trying to do as many workshops as I can right now. I just did a workshop with men and women called Release, where we basically explored moving the energy throughout our bodies with movement, sound, and breath, and then releasing whatever needs to be released from the body, and then inviting in whatever we want to invite in, because now there's this empty space that we can fill. Yeah. And that was for men and women, because it's important for me not to just hold women's spaces, because we need to put women and men in an environment where they support each other, so we know we're on the same team, so we can learn to feel safe around each other. But I think it's also important to hold just women's spaces, because the reality is there are some men who won't make the space feel safe. And it's about filtering that out. And also some women, but it's more prominent with men, unfortunately, which is why I also want to work with men. Yeah, like it's so important. But like I'm also now hosting an all-women space coming up in Melbourne on the 30th, where it's called Erotic Nature. And it's really important in this space for us as women to support each other in our like natural erotic essence, our sensuality, our sexuality, because we've shamed each other so long for it as women, and men as a collective are not going to see our sexuality as sacred until women see each other's sexuality as sacred. So I really want to create a community around that. And in that workshop, we're going to be exploring the dance of the breasts, and then the dance of the womb, and then the dance of the pussy or the yoni. Yeah, like going through those sacred divine portals and expressing them through dance, and really supporting each other in that. So if you could make that, that would be awesome. And if you want to catch me on social media, it's at the Sensual Sorceress on Instagram, and I have a website at thesensualsorceress.com. Or Sensual Sorcery on Facebook. So I hope to hear from you, and it's been beautiful talking to you today.
Thank you so much. And just to let anybody know that does listen to this, I will, link everything below the description of this, just so that way you can obviously either, if you can make I think you said it was the 30th, correct? November? Yeah. So we can make it for that. But if not, in future, you can look to work with, Sarah in the future. And I believe that you were looking at coming in Sydney potentially as well. If you are, there is a beautiful group, the Yoniverse, I believe they're called, that came up that I actually did a workshop with them, I want to say 3 months ago. And I'll be looking to collaborate with them with workshops. And I'd love to do the same thing with you as well. Just to be able to host those spaces where we can integrate the feminine and the masculine, and, weed out the individuals. It doesn't matter what gender, because, being a male, I'll experience the other opposite pole. As, being a female, you experience the opposite pole, of those that don't want to allow that unison to come together. And that's what it's about, bringing together what we within ourselves and then within the community. So that's beautiful. And thank you for that, Sarah. Appreciate you and your time today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Would you like to say anything before I finalize end the recording?
If you want to work with me one-on-one, just go to my website. You can schedule a consultation. Email me at thewitchesyoga@gmail.com. Send me a DM on Facebook. And I'm trying to really manifest right now, like bringing my work around the world. I'm from New York, so I'm going to be bringing it there by next year. So if you want me to, if you're feeling called for me to come to your city or wherever you are, just send a message. And if that feels right, that would be awesome.
Let's make that happen for you. I'm manifesting that for you too, for both of us. All right. Well, I'm going to end the recording there. So thank you once again. And please check out Sarah and with all the links that will be posted below. Thank you, Sarah, for joining me.
Thank you.
Out your body.
Riding through the city in my Merkaba. Time ain't linear, circular. First they wanna hate, now they replicas.
The Tesla, a young Tesla.
Smoking some strong, call it nebula. Crossing shorty names off my hit list. The same ones say I never hit this.